Major Lindsey and Africa presents Bouncing Back, conversations about resilience for lawyers.
Welcome to Bouncing Back, Resilience for Lawyers. This podcast is brought to you by Major Lindsey and Africa, the global leader in legal search and consulting. I'm your host, Rebecca Glatzer. I'm a managing director in the associate practice group at Major Lindsey and Africa. In this podcast, I'll speak to successful professionals about the hiccups, bumps, bruises, and setbacks they've experienced in their careers and personal lives, and how they ultimately bounce back from those experiences to thrive. Today, my guest is Judge Shannon Frison. Judge Frison was appointed to the Massachusetts Superior Court in 2013 at the age of 42. Prior to that, she served on the Boston Municipal Court from 2009 to 2013, beginning her tenure on the bench at age 39. Before her appointment, Judge Frison practiced locally and abroad as owner of Frison Law Firm. Her practice focused on blue-collar criminal law and military justice. Judge Frison spent nearly 7 years as a litigation associate at the former white-collar defense firm Dwyer and Collera in Boston, Massachusetts, prior to opening her own firm. Judge Frison earned her bachelor's degree from Harvard University and Radcliffe College. She went on to receive her Juris Doctorate from Georgetown University Law Center. Judge Frison was admitted to the Massachusetts Bar in 1995 and began her career as an assistant district attorney with the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office. Judge Frison holds the rank of Major in the United States Marine Corps and as a Marine Corps Judge Advocate. She completed Officer Candidate School and accepted her commission in the U.S. Marine Corps in 1994. She continued on to complete the Basic School and Naval Justice School in 1997. From 1997 to 2000, she was the prosecutor aboard Marine Corps Air Station New River in Jacksonville, North Carolina. In addition to serving the country and practicing law, she has served as a Gurman Teaching Fellow at Brandeis University for 3 years, as well as appearing as a guest lecturer at Brandeis on military justice and military tribunals. Judge Frison was also recently a member of the Boston Bar Association's Task Force to Prevent Wrongful Convictions and Harvard Law School's Trial Advocacy Workshop. She is a past president of the Massachusetts Black Judges Conference, and Judge Frison is a jurist, a major of Marines, and a mentor to new trial lawyers. Judge Frison, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. So I wanted to start off reading your bio. There's so many juicy things to focus on, but one of the first things that sort of caught my eye as someone who has a grandfather who served in the Marines and knowing how tough Marines tend to be, I was really interested in what motivated your decision to join the Marine Corps, especially, given there was a time when Black people couldn't serve in our military, women weren't allowed to serve, LGBTQ folk weren't allowed to serve openly. I wanted to know a little bit more about that.
You're correct. Those were all very real restrictions and barriers at the time that I joined the Marine Corps. I joined while I was in law school, and I think not just now, but back then as well, people sort of looked at that with confusion, and would often ask me, why are you doing this now? You're in law school, you're going to be a lawyer and make a lot of money or whatever. And why would you go in the armed forces? And that I made that decision during law school because I wanted another part of my career, or a second career, that was at least partly physical in nature. I found out sort of accidentally about the judge advocate programs in the Marine Corps in particular, and I thought it was a perfect fit. I was able to get that physicality. I was able to serve the country, and I was able to practice law and sort of do it all in one setting. So I started on my journey to becoming a Marine then, during the second year of my 3 years of law school. And essentially the summer after my second year, went to officer candidate school, became an officer at that point. And when I left law school, I was slated to go to the basic school, which I did, and naval justice school, which I did, and then start practicing in the Marine Corps, which I did. And so it was uh, it was an interesting time when I came on to active duty. It was before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and so it was even more strange amongst the services. And I think shortly after I left active duty, we went into Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And that did change some things, but it had its own problems as well. So I'm very pleased to be alive and see the end of all of that, where folks who have been serving anyway um, can now serve openly and include their families and get all the benefits of every other service member.
Indeed. Agreed. What happens in the dark comes to the light. It's one of those things that, as someone who was in the closet during the first part of her legal career when I was practicing, causes all sorts of undue stress to have this, duality in your life. I don't know when President Clinton signed that law into effect or had that occur. But in the military, there was an understanding that would cause all sorts of other issues. So I too am pleased that LGBTQ vote can serve actively and out and openly and proudly now. I was thinking about the duality of having visited Georgetown Law School and having presented to one else there the duality of the beautiful white fancy building and then going to basic training and I don't know, I'm visualizing you rolling around in the mud and
All of that. Yes.
juxtaposition. How did that feel, going from the hallowed halls of Georgetown University Law Center to basic training?
It is pretty much a culture shock, going from one environment to the other. The Marine Corps, is a very, very unique environment to be in, no matter where you're coming from. But certainly coming from such a large and um, sort of conservative institution, it it is certainly a culture shock going between the two worlds. But I think as a young person, in your 20s, early 20s, that's what life's about. It's time for you to do all sorts of things, and they may not all be congruent with each other, which shouldn't stop you from doing them. But that's essentially how it felt. It was like two different worlds.
Indeed. It shows that you can thrive in all kinds of environments. It's impressive. To those of us who are non-military folk. I also wanted to ask, Judge, you are one of just a few Black, openly LGBTQ women who serves on the bench. I was trying to get my arms around some of the statistics before this interview, and some of what I have is a little bit dated, but the statistics are dismal, right? I have a 2019 stat that says that of the 374 trial court justices in the U.S. system, only 39 are persons of color. I found a more recent stat that said that only 10% of the judges in the lower federal courts are Black. This is really dismal. 0.09% of sitting judges in the lower federal courts identify as LGBTQ. So we don't even get to 1% there. And only 27% of sitting judges in the lower federal courts are women. And this is, of course, the federal courts. And it's, just across the board, the statistics are not great. You're something of a unicorn checking a bunch of different boxes. And on top of being one of the few, you have made a conscious choice to be unapologetically you while serving on the bench. You have visible tattoos. I'm a little jealous. I have some tattoos of my own, and I want to sleeve out my arm, but I haven't done it yet, partially because of COVID. So you're where I want to be. I've seen some other pictures. You have short hair, shorter than mine. You dress in a gender non-conforming way, like I do. All of this I admire, but it takes some guts when our profession tends to encourage people to conform. The society encourages people to conform, but our conservative profession, the legal profession, also encourages people to perform and conform and rewards people seemingly historically for conforming. And so I wanted to, sort of better understand how serving in the military and or some of your other formative experiences have impacted how you've decided to be as a judge.
I think for everyone, and so I'm included, you are the sum of all of your parts. So going between one type of life and another, between professions, it all serves, I think, to make you well-rounded and to perhaps think about things differently than people who spend the majority of their time in one arena. And the the journey to being authentic, I think, is very stressful. It's been stressful for me. People may see the end result, but it is years of the same battles that we all have with here's what a Marine is supposed to look like. Here's what a judge is supposed to look like. Here's what a lawyer is supposed to look like. And do you fit that? It's constantly trying to meet a particular standard. And I think at some point, I have made the decision to set the standard. So, I had this short hair on active duty. That was problematic for a lot of people. It was not something that was common at that time. I think it's much more common now, but it was not common at that time. The Marine Corps really did not want women to have their heads shaved or cut very low. That was pretty much taboo. And so, I sort of had to break that barrier, and because it didn't make any sense. As you stated earlier, we were crawling through the mud. We were out on the range all day shooting. We were in the field for a week at a time. We were, it's all of that. And to me, having to do my hair made absolutely no sense. So
just kind of a time suck when you could be doing other things, right?
It was actually very practical, as well as making a point that, hey, not all women are going to have long hair. Not all women want long hair, and there's no military purpose for it.
Right.
So it was not the source of anything formal, but I did have a lot of informal conversations, criticism, debate about that. Coming into law and onto the bench, that journey continued with whether it be, how I look physically, my hair, or my style of dress. I have been known to wear ties a lot, and that was different for the court here in Massachusetts for women. And obviously, like you stated, I have tattoos and continue to work on those tattoos, continue to get that work done. And that's been a source of curiosity and debate and everything else. So the path to getting to where, I do my work and live my life to the fullest is it's not been without some hiccups, and questioning, is this really how I want to go about things? But certainly the older I get, the more I think there's really no other way to go about things. I cannot go through life being or trying to be anyone else. And in terms of the standards are made by humans and changed by humans. And so, I don't see any of those things as permanent barriers or issues that should remain in place. And so it's my one of my goals is to use myself as an example for people to step fully into themselves at the same time that they're stepping fully into work, and to make all of that work together, and to accept the challenges of anyone who says that it can't work together. So, um, for the Massachusetts courts, you don't even have to go into the different identities. You can stop at Black jurists because there are only two of us on the Superior Court.
There you go.
And I find that to be dismal as a stat, and ridiculous, for 2022.
Agreed.
So there are a bunch of reasons that I try to be open, transparent, and keep the um, conversation about these issues going, in not so much for me and my trajectory, but for all the folks coming behind me and alongside me, to hopefully not have the same issues, or at least not at the same intensity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you are a path breaker in many ways, and difficult when you're the first in all these different areas, and you have been the first in lots of areas. I wonder, you sort of alluded to this in answering my last question. You said it's been work, it's taken time. You alluded to the fact that it's taken time to sort of fully accept yourself and say, this is who I am, and here's what I'm, damn the consequences, if you will. There's no other way to be. Life is short, and I'm going to be who I am. That is always a process, and I'm interested to know, for those in our listening audience who are trying to figure that out for themselves. I do think for some folks, um, you know, we fall into law. It sounds good, right? It looks good on paper. I don't like math or science. I'm not going to be a doctor. Being a lawyer is still prestigious in this country. It can pay well, and either advocate for. There's all sorts of excellent things you can get out of the profession. You can help change the law or shape the law. But sometimes people just sort of, it's like a fallback, right? If you don't want to be a doctor, or you don't know, you're not going to be an engineer, or you don't want to be a teacher, this is the thing that seems to make sense. And so I talk to lawyers day in, day out who are a little bit, kind of unsure. Like, now that I got here, I don't know if I want to be here, or I don't know if I'm in the right practice area, or I don't know if I'm working in the right setting. I personally went through that battle. And I was wondering, I think you can sort of analogize, you're talking about a lot of personal acceptance as well as professional acceptance. I'm curious to know what bolstered you, what any of these deterrents could make someone go, oh, never mind. Like, I'm gonna throw up my hands. I don't need to be a part of the law, or I'm not going to drop out of the Marines. I'm sure more people drop out of basic than stay. And what was it that kept you? What thing or people or things bolstered you to keep you, going on your path?
Well, I have um, a very good network of people that know and love me, and that I've known all my life, or most of my life. And so no matter what I'm doing professionally, I am able to stay very grounded through my family, friends from school, friends from the Marine Corps, friends who are in law or judges. And the all along the way, I've maintained and cultivated that network. And the in terms of the challenges, they certainly supported me, have supported me, and still do support me through those challenges. But I think overall, my desire to serve, whether it's the country or the Commonwealth, and a desire for excellence. I think that, we have, we sometimes forget the benefits of merit, just flat out. Whatever you do, doing the best that you can do at it. I'm a firm believer that whatever you do, you should do it at the highest level possible, the highest level that you can do it at, as a contribution to your community, your state, the country, the world, however far your reach can go. So I think that has driven me since school, and continues to drive me.
So I think that's great, and having a strong supportive community to assist you and to vent to and to get advice from is definitely um, an important way to be resilient. One of the things I would ask, and I see this as analogous, and the answer may be the same, but I'm just curious. When I asked about, your choice to serve in the Marine Corps and the sort of, considerations given its history of the exclusion of different groups of people, you've gotten some criticism from your own community. I'd say the Black community is kind of a broad brush for why you would choose to be part of the criminal justice system, given the long and complicated history that the Black community has had with criminal justice and the police force, and continues to have justice. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
I think that the criticisms of being a part of the criminal justice system are valid, and it's, every day I recommit to the work that I do, because there are many parts of being in the system, doing this particular job, our history, our being Black folks, folks of color, underrepresented people, our history within the system, and our treatment, current day disparities that still remain. Um, there, and of course, we're all uh, witnesses and traumatized probably by a lot of what we see online, as we see things in the criminal justice system play out, even from um, uh, police, from the moment of interaction with police all the way through to trial, perhaps if it ends in a trial. There are so many steps and so many points of discretion held by people along the way, from police to DAs to lawyers and judges, um, and and all of that discretion matters. So it's pretty much daily that I am thinking about my role in this system, and thinking about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, thinking about how I do business and how to make a difference in the disparities that we have seen and have learned exist to this day and in this state. So, even you don't have to go to the southern states and the states that we all badmouth from here up north to find these disparities. They're right here at home as well. So it's a hard decision. I don't think you do this kind of work, judging, and not as a Black jurist. I don't think you do it and not consider your role in this system, probably daily. And so it does not go, it's not a trivial criticism. But I do think that being committed to the role and to making positive change in what happens um, across the board in criminal matters, I think that is an important function. And I don't think you get it but for participation in the system. There is always room for outside, um, sort of pressure to change a system. but I think there's also always room inside that system to change it. And I don't think either is less important than the other, but I think they're both necessary.
It makes me, what you said, makes me think about that Roosevelt quote about, the man in the arena. It's easy to give criticism when you're on the outside and you're not actually participating in whatever it is that you're criticizing. And it's the folks who, dare to kind of get in the muck and, kind of, be in the arena where things are actually happening, and to make these difficult decisions are the ones that can really have an impact. You can, attempt to create change from the outside, but you can also get your hands dirty and attempt to make change from the inside, and will likely be more effective. So that makes a lot of sense. To your point, a serious consideration, to participate, and if there were more Black jurists, this would probably be less of a discussion, because I think there would be an opportunity to impact the bias and the systemic racism and the other things that historically have gone on in a way with numbers. But I think it's really honorable that you are trying to pave the way for other folks to come behind you. Speaking of younger lawyers, the past few years have been really difficult for everyone. COVID, due to events, awakening with regard to George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. What advice would you give newly minted attorneys who may not have experienced this kind of tumult in their professional lives and personal lives before, perhaps due to their youth, maybe they weren't around during the Great Recession, or some of the other important historical events of the last few years? What advice would you give young attorneys?
It's not smooth sailing. It doesn't matter. I don't think it matters what decade you're born in, or which parts of our history you are alive for. The issues that we face are pretty constant, and it's amazing how resistant to change the law is, and courts are. Courts are some of the hardest places to change the culture, and I think judges are some of the hardest people to persuade to do things differently. And in this profession, coming up as a lawyer, you are going to experience some kind of bias, maltreatment, disparities, or disparate treatment. And I think the point is to be ready to deal with that without being surprised that it's happening. I would say be ready for some trials and tribulations along these lines, and think about who you want to assist you when that happens, and how you want to get through it. What are the things that reduce stress in your life? We spend a good amount of time right now on self-care. I think across the board, but lawyers and judges are certainly sort of, I think, a little late to the game when it comes to self-care, mental health, and longevity, due to good care of yourself. But that's really important, and I think it looks a little different for each person. Sort of what all the parts are to your self-care, but that's something that, no matter how old you are in this business or how experienced you are, I think you've got to think seriously about and put in place, so that when you do go through the sort of battles that we have to go through on a daily basis, that you have some a soft landing for coming out of those situations. You don't want to let things build up inside of you. That they will come out. They may come out in ways that you don't want. You don't want to be sort of overreactive to things. So you've got to find your own sort of middle ground at dealing with issues at the same time that you're doing the actual work that you do, because that can get lost in the shuffle. And at the same time that you take care of your family and take care of all of your non-work responsibilities. So, there's a lot to life, and taking care of yourself will ensure that you can devote appropriate time to each aspect of your life. And I think that's really important for lawyers to keep in mind.
Absolutely. Last question for you. What keeps you calm? You mentioned your friends and family. Are there other things, other sort of practices or things you try to do regularly, habits, if you will, that help kind of center you?
Yes, going to the beach.
Oh, yeah.
I essentially have to have some beach time in my life to remain sane.
Yes.
And that's what I mean by, it looking different for everyone. And some people listen to music, some people play music, some people sing, some people travel. People fellowship with family and friends, get together with people. There are all sorts of things that may be helpful in that regard. For me, I do like to have copious amounts of downtime if I can, and I call it unobserved time. I think that's important for people, where no one is expecting anything of you. So sometimes we feel like we're having downtime because we're at home. Well, that can be, but it's not always the case. You may have people who live with you or people who depend on you, where your time still isn't yours, or where there's still expectations of you. And I just encourage people to find some time where nothing's expected of you, whatever you like to do in that period of time, and get as much of that as you can, because I find that that's when I do my best thinking and my best planning for the future, when I literally have some time where I don't have to be anywhere, no one needs to speak to me, I don't have to write anything, no one is actually in need of my attention. And if you can carve out some time like that for yourself on a regular basis, I think it's really healthy, and that's one of the things I try to do.
I love this, and I'm permission to steal. I think it's a
Yes,
great
absolutely. Steal it, use it freely.
Yeah, I'm totally doing that, Joe. Well, thank you so much for giving me your time today and sharing your experiences with our listeners. I personally found what you said very valuable. I know that our listening audience will too. I sincerely appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for this type of podcast, and for your invitation. I'm happy to do it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Bouncing Back, Resilience for Lawyers. Join us next time for another story about thriving after overcoming challenges. You can find Bouncing Back and other programming for lawyers on MLA's Legal Talk Network.